Shy and elusive, the otter is the second largest member of the mustelid family in the UK. With 13 species of otter across the globe, the family is well adapted to life in the water. However, in the UK, the otter has not fared as well. The decline in otter number was first recorded in the late 1950s by those involved in otter hunts. Habitat loss, organochlorine pesticides, and river management led to the otter population becoming increasingly fragmented, with strongholds in the north and west of the UK and small pockets in East Anglia remaining. In 1971, the Otter Trust was formed. The plan was to breed otters in captivity to sustain and rebuild the population in East Anglia. To better understand the process of releasing a mammalian predator into the UK, I am with conservation worker Dr. Rowena Jessup, who headed the release team. Dr. Jessup, welcome.
Oh, thank you.
First of all, when and how was it decided that a reintroduction was needed?
Well, the otter population in the south and east had become highly fragmented, and by the 1980s it was clear that although organochlorine pesticides had been banned and water quality was increasing, the otter population was still declining. It was failing to thrive. So the Otter Trust set up otter havens in rivers in East Anglia, and these were agreements with landowners to provide protection to otters, encourage good habitat, and discouraged eel fishing. By the 1980s, as I say, the population was still declining. Other factors appeared to be quite suitable. There were good areas of habitat, fish stocks were fairly good, and many areas appeared ideal for otters again. It was felt that strategically placed otter releases could be used to rejoin the fragments of the remaining wild population. And by 1983, the Otter Trust had sufficient young otters to start a sustained release programme, and we agreed a methodology with the Nature Conservancy Council.
So what was the first step on the ground for the reintroduction?
Well, the first step was really part of the Otter Trust's normal routine. We did a lot of otter surveys on many of the rivers in East Anglia to establish exactly where otters remained and where the gaps were. And when we looked at the population distribution, we concentrated on gaps in the population and looked for stretches of rivers, a minimum of 10 kilometres of river, with suitable habitat, good water quality and fish stocks. But most importantly, perhaps, was to find an area with landowners who actively supported the release programme. And these stretches of protected river needed to be within 20 kilometres by river of surviving wild population.
And how did you select the individuals to be released?
Well, this was a tricky one because otters have a very low rate of reproduction. Females usually produce only 1 or 2 cubs, and the young remain dependent on the female for up to a year, so population growth is very slow. Also, it was difficult initially to establish a breeding population in captivity with enough unrelated females and males to produce a viable population for release. But by 1983, the Otter Trust had established a successful breeding programme with a wide gene pool. There were 7 females and 3 males, all unrelated, and new otters were being donated to the Otter Trust from far and wide, in fact as far away as Ireland, to ensure that a diverse genetic population was available. It was decided that groups of 2 females and a male would be released to mimic the natural distribution in areas supporting healthy populations, where a male patrols an area with females within his territory. It was also decided to release otters between 18 months and 2 years old, so that they were independent from the mother but not yet sexually mature. So there's a good chance that the otters would remain in place once established on a release site and stay there long enough to start breeding. Obviously, in each case, 3 unrelated individuals were chosen for the release.
And how did you define the technique for releasing the otters?
The methodology was designed by the Otter Trust in conjunction with the Nature Conservancy Council. We looked at other releases, like the red squirrels released on the Isle of Wight, but there were actually very few examples of that time at that time, and no examples of predator releases. It was felt that the best idea was to build a release pen very similar to the pen the otters lived in captivity, to build that in the area where they were to be released and to put it in a central site so that whether they went upstream or downstream there would be a large area of protected habitat. It was also important to continue their normal routine of feeds so that they would become accustomed to living on the site and having food provided in the pen. This way they become used to the new sights, sounds and smells of the area, but hopefully after release they would know that if they couldn't find enough food, they would be able to go back and have the food provided in the pen. After 3 weeks on the site, the pen door was left open and just after the evening feed, and the otters were allowed to roam in and out at will. But having a known area where food was available, it was important that they could come back if they didn't hone their hunting skills quickly.
And presumably after release you monitored the individuals?
Yes, in the first and second releases, the male otter was fitted with a radio transmitter. This was on a specially designed harness which had rivets which would rust through, so the harness would drop off after a little while. The male was chosen because the males have the largest territories and visit the females within their territory. The radio tracking was backed up by normal river surveys, and in the second release, remote cameras were also used on the pen so that for 48 hours after the release we could see the activity at the pen and see the otters coming and going when they wanted food. And the second release was also covered by BBC wildlife cameramen who attempted to film the otters during the first week, but sadly only captured them twice. Although the radio failed on the second release after only a week, on the first release the otter was monitored for 50 nights until the harness fell off and was retrieved. The river monitoring continued weekly for the first 6 months, and after that at less frequent intervals. But 14 months after the first release, I discovered tracks of otter cubs under a bridge, confirming that the first release had successfully re-established a breeding population.
That is fantastic news, and I'm delighted to have talked to you today. Thank you, Dr. Jessup.
Thank you.
I've been AJ. Thank you.